Why do kids wet the bed? I know a thing or two about that, and I'll share it all with you. I am so proud that I am an expert on bedwetting. I know that's weird, but I am. I got to do so much work in this field early in my career, and I even wrote my doctoral dissertation on the topic. I know some things about bedwetting, and I think as a parent, probably the most important place to start is understanding that there are different categories of bedwetting. There's primary and there's secondary. There's nocturnal and there's diurnal. Now we combine those categories so that we have primary, nocturnal enuresis. We have secondary nocturnal enuresis. We have primary diurnal enuresis. And we've got secondary diurnal enuresis. So what do these terms mean? First of all, I'm saying enuresis. That just means wetting. It's an elimination disorder, meaning how we eliminate the waste from our body, okay? And there's number 1 and number 2. We're just talking about number 1 today. Wetting. That's what I mean when I say enuresis. Nocturnal. That means at night. So when we say bedwetting, that's nocturnal enuresis. Got it? Primary. Primary simply means that there has never been a period of dryness. Haven't ever been there for more than, I think the diagnostic criteria say that it's like 3 months, 5 months, 6 months. It depends on what type we're looking at. But for a period of several months, we have never had that long of a period of dryness. That's what primary means. Secondary means we have had a period of dryness, but then we went back to the wetting. Diurnal means daytime, or basically night and day. Okay? So if it's happening during the day, during waking hours, and at night, or if it's only during the day, that's what we call diurnal. So you got all the terms? Primary and secondary, diurnal and nocturnal. These are the different types of wetting. It probably makes sense now to talk a little bit about development, because it's normal for a child to wet day or night. You know this because when your kids are little, you put them in diapers. Why? Because they don't have the ability to take care of the problem on their own. When we go through the potty training with our kids, we hope that now they're not going to have accidents anymore and everything's going to be just peachy, right? Doesn't happen that way. Most of the time, we have accidents. That's normal. And especially at nighttime. So you might notice, well, my kid's doing okay during the day, but he's still wet in the bed at night. Yeah, very typical. To answer the question, why do kids wet the bed? It's because that's how kids are built. It's what kids do for a while. There comes a time when we should be able to expect them to stay dry. We don't even diagnose bedwetting. I mean, clinically speaking, until they're a certain age or it's happened for a certain amount of time. And that age typically is around 4, 5, 6 years old is when we're expecting them to stay dry. Now, it's still pretty common for kids who are 5, 6, 7, 8 years old to still be wetting the bed occasionally. If this is your child, don't worry too much. I've done a few other videos on bedwetting. In fact, there is a playlist here on the channel about bedwetting. So if this is something you're dealing with, go to that playlist and you'll get some additional input. We've also created an ebook with a training program called Finally Dry, and you can find that at finallydry.info. Finallydry.info. There's some resources for you. Let's go back to the question, why do kids wet the bed? Now we've set up the developmental expectation, so you know, even if my kid is 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, still pretty normal. Now if they're older than that, yeah, we're outside of the norm and we're dealing with what we would clinically diagnose as bedwetting. Let's make a distinction now between the primary causes of nocturnal, the nighttime, or diurnal, the daytime, and primary versus secondary. Let's start with primary nocturnal enuresis. Kids have never been dry for a significant period of time, and it happens only at night. This is caused by two things: deep sleeping and a deficiency of a hormone called ADH, antidiuretic hormone. You have to have both of those causes for it to happen. Because if you're not a deep sleeper, you're going to get up and go to the bathroom, right? And if you got enough of the hormone, you get dried up anyway, like most people who don't have to get up and go at all. Both causes are necessary for primary nocturnal enuresis. When we're talking about secondary enuresis, whether it's nocturnal or diurnal, either one, the cause is often associated with some kind of loss. There's usually more of a psychological component if it's secondary. Now, if it's primary, we haven't found any clear connection to psychological causes. Kid's probably doing okay psychologically. But with secondary, there is often, not always, but there is often some kind of an experience of loss that precipitated the enuresis. It might be the death of a family member. It might be a move that the family experienced. It might be the loss of a pet. But typically there is some element that has an emotional component to it. And so we handle that differently. We typically treat it differently. Diurnal, daytime wetting, sometimes, not always, is associated with some kind of physiological cause. So there might be a urinary tract infection, or there might be something going on physically and physiologically. We want to take a look at that and rule it out. There are other causes for diurnal that could be associated with psychological factors as well. It gets more complicated when we're dealing with secondary or diurnal enuresis. Primary nocturnal enuresis is probably the most simple kind. And that's the kind that I focus on in that treatment program I told you about at finallydry.info. When we can reasonably conclude that there are some other psychological or emotional components, we want to make sure we're addressing those appropriately as part of a treatment program. It doesn't help anyone to be shamed or ridiculed or threatened. In fact, often this makes it worse. But out of frustration, sometimes that's what parents do to try to address the problem. Well, be forgiving of yourself, because if you've become a little impatient about your child's wetting problem, that's totally normal. I mean, it's a hassle. Let's regroup, understand the problem correctly so that we can help our kids the most and approach it with calmness. There's a lot of things that you can do about this. So hit the playlist for some of those other resources and keep in mind that there's a lot of hope. I hope you picked up a thing or two from all of that you can find useful or helpful. On that primary nocturnal enuresis, really the training program that we put together at finallydry.info, it works.
I saw her standing in the street alone.